everybody. Karen Roby here for Tech Republic. I'm glad today to be joined by Alicia Frame. She is the lead product manager for data science for Neo4j. Thanks for being here with us today, Alicia.
Thank you for having me.
Certainly. We've been talking about this for quite a while now. So many companies are using their resources to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 as we're all trying to work through this and pooling resources in a lot of ways to get things done in a hurry. Your company in particular and the platform that you have there, talk a little bit about. I know pharmaceutical companies especially are looking to you guys and scientists in different ways to pull information together to help during this pandemic. Talk a little bit about what you're doing, and then we'll just take it from there.
Cool. So Neo4j is a graph database. And what that means is we store data. Probably if you've used databases before, that's, tables with lots of joins. We store data as a graph. So you can think of it like nodes are the nouns, they're things, and then they're connected to each other with relationships. And what that means is that we're really good at storing disparate data from different sources, data where relationships are important. So you could think of it like in a social network, like I know this other person, and those are two nodes, and there's a relationship of nodes. Or in the pharmaceutical sector, you could think of it like genes, chemicals, and diseases. So I have data from different sources that characterizes, the genes associated with different diseases, what drugs are there to treat those diseases. There's publications that are pulled into this graph around, what genes are expressed in patients who have been exposed to a certain virus in this case. And so a graph database is really good at representing these really complex concepts. And so what happened with COVID-19 is really back in March, we started to get a lot of requests. We have a really active developer community that we spend a lot of time, talking to our users. What are they interested in? What do they need? And we started getting requests for, hey, I have a project where I want to build a knowledge graph about COVID-19. Do you guys have any resources to help us out? Or, hey, I want to build a contact tracing app to figure out who's been interacting with someone with a disease. Can you guys get me set up? We have a cloud platform called Aura. And, can I have some credits to run on Aura? And we kept hearing, a couple requests and then more and more. And we decided it was really important to come to the forefront and respond to that. And so starting at the end of March, we had this kind of concerted effort to say, look, if you're doing something with COVID-19, we want to help. We had a Graphs for Good hackathon. We've devoted internal engineering resources as well as our field team to help people get up and running, kind of figure out how to do the engineering work to answer their questions, as well as we did like a big Graphs for Good hackathon to try to get everybody together in one place and build off each other's ideas.
Yeah, and I love that. I like the collaboration there, Alicia, certainly. And when you talk about the pharmaceuticals specifically, or just researchers in general, the ones who've been asking you for, we need you to build this for this as it relates to COVID-19, talk a little bit about how having it in this format will help them do their work quicker as opposed to how they would have done it before.
So if you're looking at drug discovery or kind of curing diseases, kind of in the past, what you would do is you would read a lot of papers. There's, hundreds of papers, thousands of papers being published every day with information about, I studied this gene and it did this. That's really hard to consume. So if you're one drug discovery scientist, it's basically impossible to keep on top of the literature. And if you think about COVID in particular, the pace of publication is crazy. So what they're doing with Neo4j is we have folks who are using NLP to basically parse those papers and extract the key concepts. So what are the genes mentioned in this paper? What are the diseases that they're talking about? What are the symptoms? What are the molecular pathways involved? And then that data is fed into a graph. So you have all of these different papers, you're extracting the key concepts, and then they're all being knitted together in a graph so that you can really rapidly start exploring and traversing. So you might want to say, with COVID, we know the spike protein is important. So I want to find all of the antibody studies that have mentioned interactions with the spike protein. And now I don't have to read 30 papers. What I can do instead is I can write a query with Cypher, which is our query language, to answer that question really rapidly. So it's basically you have all of this complicated interconnected data right at your fingertips.
Okay, and Alicia, I know you guys work with many different partners and companies that are involved in this. If you could just, maybe talk about one in particular, just mention the partnership there and what their role is.
Yeah, so one really cool example that's kind of close to my heart is Telek, which is a company based in New York City. And they're actually, their business is they work for pharmaceutical companies to do that kind of text processing that I talked about. So parsing papers, internal data, patents, and putting that into a graph with a UI so that users can kind of get that information at their fingertips. Neo4j is a database. They build tooling to populate the database and kind of make it easy to use the database. And so they've built out Telek's graph.c19, which is a public graph of data that they've parsed from publications and patents that normally they kind of sell that data to pharmaceutical companies. But instead, because we're all working on the same thing together, they've actually made it freely accessible to researchers, drug companies, anyone interested in using the data. And so they're working with the Empire Institute in New York State to help with answering questions like, a drug like remdesivir, how does it act and how likely is it to actually help with COVID-19?
And, when you talk, to wrap up here, Alicia, when you talk about, time is of the essence when it comes to the type of work that needs to be done right now to find a vaccine and for contact tracing and all of those kind of things. Did you find that with your developers and everyone that was kind of pulling together here, you talked about the hackathon and things like that, was there a sense of that you could see a different sense of unity because, we're all impacted by this. No one can escape the reality of what is COVID-19. So did you see kind of a difference in the level of how people want to be involved and their desire to really make a difference?
Definitely. We saw, drug discovery is historically something where, companies want to keep their secret, right? If I'm going to discover a new drug, I want to keep that gene secret until I can patent it. This is different. Folks are open to collaboration because we need to respond as quickly as possible. So it was really amazing to see, companies that would usually be each other's competitors coming together to work on graph projects, or seeing people volunteer their time. I worked with some clinicians who, outside of their work hours, were spending their time doing engineering on these projects just because they wanted to help. So it was really nice to see people who don't normally work together coming together to open source information, solve problems collaboratively, instead of kind of everybody hiding off in their own silo. And I think that's helped a lot with the research velocity.
Yeah, I would say so. And it's nice to see, makes us all remember that we're all in it together. To say the very least. Well, Alicia, it's really interesting to talk with you. I think it's great the work that you're doing and that all the companies involved and the resources. It's great to see how everybody is coming together. And we'll certainly follow up with you again, a couple months down the line to see how all this is panning out and what's to come of it. So again, thank you so much for being with us here today. And all of you, thanks for watching. You can find out much more, of course, on Tech Republic.